Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, October 6th. We're starting really late. A, I overslept, which is pretty typical for having insomnia, and B, I just had major issues with plumbing and electronics all at once, which is just lovely, and ended up having to spend extra time trying to fix that, which it will be fixed eventually, but it's not as big a deal. For the accountability section, we're going to try and rush very quickly here. I will say I did work on the thumbnail a little bit more, so I want to show it off and see if maybe somebody would send me some more feedback as far as a potential thumbnail generator for games. So here it is. I can't highlight things, but the zoom in of the main image is a little bit better now. No longer is it showing the fairy wing on the right. The numbers got traded. I changed around. Ideally in OBS you could put everything you want in a group and then have that group be a window with a border around it, but it doesn't seem like that really works. So I'm still having to manipulate the transform settings in OBS with a lot of these elements individually. Which is frustrating because when you have like 5 different elements on top of an image and you all need to change it by a couple of pixels to decide whether there's enough like red pixels on the border on the left versus the right, which it should be the right amount, but even now when I look at it, it doesn't actually look like it is the right amount. It looks like there might be twice as many pixels on the left border than the right. I got the gradient in the background of the logo in the lower left hand corner, and as good as I think I'm ever going to get it. It would be ideal if I could start that more at it as a 100% solid white and then fade out further, but it works certainly. And that gives a white background that then lets me take out the white background on my logo. I still haven't really picked the font I want to use, but I have added a drop shadow effect to the font to make the text stand out and look a little bit better. But then if I'm going to use something like Image Magic to automatically generate the numbers in the top right for an episode number, then whatever font I use, I may very well not have the ability to add a drop shadow there and automate that. Which that could certainly be frustrating to say the least. But yeah, I at the moment have put more polish into it, and it does look nice in this one very specific scenario. I think you would have to probably drag and drop a lot based on the game. I suppose you could not use Open Magic and add the drop shadow, but then you'd have to just spend a lot of time going episode 1, take a screenshot, episode 2, take a screenshot, episode 3, take a screenshot. And yeah, that would be frustrating. And frankly, I guess I'd want the same image every time. Otherwise, the fire in the background as it's animated would give me a slightly different screenshot. Although in this case it wouldn't really matter. But yeah, I'm out of ideas at this point though, as far as what else I could do to make a thumbnail. I'm out of ideas as far as whether that's really a particularly good custom thumbnail or not. It's probably better than just the random ones generated by YouTube, but yeah, what can I say? That is still very much in the experimental, no promises phase, where it is very, very possible that I'll never actually implement that, just because it's going to take more time. And as much as I can say I played more Shadowhand of the solitaire game, I have like one more chapter to do. There's a lot of the chapters now I've had to play on normal mode, because there's, to my mind, no testing whatsoever was really done to see how often, while playing on very hard mode, like how often on very hard mode it would take to actually win in Shadowhand. It's just too random, because it gives you these random solitaire deals. And see, here we have Shadowverse X Shadowverse. Two different logos for two separate games, basically. Now we have Elite Puzzles, which that's gonna suck. And yeah, I've not been spending a lot of time trying to play these off screen, which I need to do. The good news is I did get the victories here, so playing in rotation is less of a focus. But yeah, I definitely have not been focused on playing Shadowverse. And them giving us new things to do certainly is not something that I really appreciate. Let's open a pack. And yeah, you can definitely tell from the accountability section also, if you follow them, that I never actually get around to scheduling anything. I go 3-4 weeks out of a month sometimes and go, oh, every weekend I need to schedule videos, and then I never get around to doing it. And I wait until the very last second to do it, and that is certainly annoying, and not the right way to run a YouTube channel, certainly. We were looking for cards here. I'm totally clicking the wrong things. Liquefy cards and an extra. Yeah, I think we already, with the new expansion, are at a point where even opening like one pack every stream is a little extreme. So since we started late, what we're going to try and do is have a fairly quick experience. Like, I've sorted the articles a little bit differently today, and I think today will probably be not super focused on playing the Shadowverse as much as getting just the news done and moving forward from that point. These puzzles are probably going to be incredibly frustrating. See, the only thing, it kind of makes sense that you would wait to give these elite level puzzles until people have actually played with the cards and know what they do. But that's... So if I evolve this, this would give +1/+1. If I did this. So we can play the Great Naturian Tree. This has Storm. This does 2 trees. Like, when this brings in... Moose is a Knight. It does have Storm. So, Naturian trees. Natron. And playing that would reduce this so we could banish an enemy follower. Okay. So I think you probably start with this. Do this. And then go ahead and hit that. And then do this. Okay. Now when we play this, hopefully it destroys this first before this summons a new guy. And so then you do another one of these, I think. This card probably doesn't do anything for us. We have like 3 cards that we're gonna draw. Ooh, yeah, we may run out of cards. And that may very well be what we're just looking to do is make us run out of cards. Yeah. Unless I have the win condition already here, summoning all these glass doesn't feel like it's the right move. See, this could banish an enemy follower for 0. This can restore 3 for 0. This can be played for 0. Well, this can only banish an enemy follower, so sure. Do that. Otherwise, this could have done 2 damage, but we didn't have enough for it. This can heal. And this can have storm.
Are you the enemy I seek?
Where was the one that would have given your health +1/+1? Would have been this. So then you do that, and then you do that, and you do that. And if I had evolved Elena's Prayer, it would have been an amulet. It would have given +1/+1 to all allied followers. 3 play point amulet. So let's reset that. So evolve there.
Let's get things started.
I'll fight to bring peace to the world.
Okay. see.
Oh no! Together! Weak. Here I go!
So, yeah.
A fitting end.
What else would we want to do? This.
Together! Weak. Here I go!
Yeah, this definitely feels like this is something where I would eventually figure this out. I'm not. I don't think there's any real struggle here. Okay. And then I guess what you probably don't want to do is play this, because it doesn't have storm and it gets in the way. And then banishing an enemy follower probably doesn't matter. Playing that probably doesn't matter. You probably want this.
Are you the enemy I seek?
And then you hit this.
You're in good hands.
And that gets you to 15. And this would give me 1 play point. So I could play 3. But how could I get something off the field? Yeah, this gets down to the question about just how do you get this off the field. Otherwise you're doing 5 here,
Please work. Please
5
work.
here, 5 here, and then if I could play this on the field, I could win. But how do I do that? Because this doesn't have storm, and we can't give it evolve. This doesn't work to do that. This potentially could have been on the field instead, I suppose, but yeah. This doesn't have storm either. So I've played all the cards, I've just played them in some weird order. Something that I don't know how I would adjust or fix that. This. Play one of those.
Here I go.
Well, if I just played a second one of this, that wouldn't do anything. If I evolved and then healed now, that wouldn't really do anything. This only lets you do damage to an enemy follower.
Oh no. Together. Weak. Here I go. A fitting end. Together. Weak. Here I go.
Well, wait a minute. Whenever a tree comes in on this one, it gets +1/+1. So
I'm not mousing around.
maybe if I had done something different.
Sugar's the best cure for the blues, you know.
But this doesn't have, this does have storm. And I guess this might save you another
I believe the sweet
cost.
inherit the earth. Now don't push.
You did that,
Fitting end.
then you couldn't evolve that. So theoretically, maybe this could be a 4 or a 5, but you'd still not be able to evolve there. So pretty much that. 4, 7, 8, 9, 13 in this.
Draw your blade.
But this pattern might work.
King's work. Follow my lead.
We just have to have gotten 3 more. So let's try that. Nature and tree. Place 1 here.
Squeak. Here I
And
go.
then hit 1 here.
I'm not mousing around.
Then here. Then here.
I'm not mousing around.
Okay. This will do 2 damage. Wouldn't work. This I'd have to give something more to. So I think you do this.
I'm not mousing around.
Then I think you evolve this.
This game is over.
I'll fight to bring peace to the world.
Then let's see. I guess you just banish this guy.
You're in good hands.
That still really only gets you to 15. Had I attacked the 4 guy and banished the 2 guy,
Follow my lead.
then that would have killed this. Which then would have let me potentially put something else with Storm on the field. Which would have had to have been this. So that could have gotten you another 4. But is there a way that we could have powered up people? Let's try it again. Yep, and this is going to take forever. And that's the problem with all of these puzzles, is that they are just inherently going to either take a lot of extra time in a game that I really don't want to give any more time to, or
I'm not mousing around.
they're just going to be incredibly frustrating.
I'm not mousing around.
Let's get things started.
I'll fight to bring peace to the world.
Okay. So now, if we did this
Follow my lead.
and killed this,
A fitting end.
then playing this would do 1 damage, which would get it to 15, and not let you win. Playing this would give you Storm, I think it's pretty much your only option. Playing this doesn't work. This would do 2 damage, but doesn't have storm. So I think you do this.
The enemy I seek.
And then I think you do this.
You're in good hands.
And yet that still puts you 1 short.
Draw your blade.
Please work.
So what's the hint here? Evolve Daffodil Medusa Princess. What? Which one was that? That seems insane. Why in the world would you evolve that one? Okay, so you evolve this one,
Close as my tail.
and then I kind of feel like you're still on that same path.
Together. Squeak. Here I go.
Should I play the way I played before? I guess is the question.
Together. Squeak. Here I go. Oh no. Together. Squeak. Here I go.
A fitting end.
Let's see. This would evolve to banish an evil follower with 3 defense or less. There's kind of no reason to do that, though.
Together. Squeak. Here I go.
Okay. I don't see any reason to keep that around. So we could play this, and then that would get you 10, 12, 13. Where's the remaining 3 damage coming from? If I play this now, I can't do anything. This would do 2 damage. I don't even know if that actually would do 2 damage.
Are you the enemy I seek?
Follow my lead. Please work.
Draw your blade.
Well, evolving this starts you in one direction.
Over.
Close as my tail, fellow muse.
Then do this.
Together. Squeak. Here.
I'm gonna, I think, do 1 here.
Together. Squeak. Here I go.
1 here.
A fitting end.
And then this. And then
Together.
this.
Here I go. I'm not mousing around.
And then I assume you just bash that. So that gets to 10. Now we just would need to get 6 more damage. These don't have charge. If I played this, it would not be playable. And this doesn't have storm. I mean, if I played this, I would do 2 damage where we need 6 damage. Playing that really does nothing for you. Playing this for 2 kind of does nothing for you.
Are you the enemy I seek? Draw your blade.
Please work.
Follow my lead.
So yeah, it seems like the only way you'd even succeed here is just by finding some way
Get things started.
to have
My tail, fellow muse.
these Natrian characters, this little mouse,
Weak. Here I go.
not attack anything at all.
I'm not mousing around. I'm not mousing around. I'm not mousing around.
Okay. So that gets you to that point. Now the question, I guess, is I guess you play this and that would destroy that, and then that would destroy that, and that does 12 damage. But it's probably fairly safe to do that. And I could attack this with this, and then play this one instead. Or I could play this. Maybe.
Please
Like, I
work.
guess if you do this,
A fitting end.
and then you played that.
Sugar's the best cure for the blues, you know.
I'm not mousing around.
And they gave you exactly 1 extra card, so you can't just run out of cards. Although, even if you did draw the last card, you wouldn't really be in any major danger. Okay. So we now have 11, but this one can't attack. Plus 4. That's 15. But then, how could we play this and get rid of it also? Just go ahead and play that, since that's obviously not a card that matters.
Are you
Yeah, I just don't get this. It's like here, here, and here. You can't. You can't play this somehow. Yeah. It seems like what you would have to do is maybe like do something like this. Put that on the field. Put that on the field.
Weak. Here I go.
Select that.
Sugar's the best cure for the blues, you know.
And then you can't play an amulet at all.
Please work. A fitting end.
If we played this would do 2 damage. In game +2/+2. This just restores 1 damage to you, it doesn't do something else.
I'm not mousing around. I'm not mousing around.
There's kind of no reason not to just play the nature and trees.
I'm not mousing around. I'm not mousing around.
You're in good hands.
Banish an enemy follower.
Are you the enemy I seek?
If this wasn't in the way, then this would be 1 less damage. And then we would need to do 2 damage here. Which maybe we could do that. We could recover enough points. What are we wasting points on? 2 here, plus that, yeah. I think that might be it.
This game
Evolve here.
is over.
Close as my tail, fellow mutants.
Play this. This.
Fight together.
This.
Here I go.
This.
I'm not mousing around.
This.
I'm not mousing around.
Okay, I'm not sure anything more needs to be played. But I think you play this.
I'm not mousing around.
That leaves that at 4-4.
Please work.
It lets us do
A
this
fitting end.
and this. Right. And what happens here now is this would be 2. This will give us 1 back. This would be 5 to do 2 damage. No, it doesn't make sense. This and this leaves us with 6. So we would need this to be able to attack.
Are you the enemy I seek?
Sugar's the best cure for the blues, you know.
See, that would only have pumped it up that much. Yeah, we're just like 1 short. I give up.
I can
40
see
minutes trying a dumb puzzle and covering none of the video game news, which should be the major focus here. Like, I couldn't figure out most of these puzzles, and I couldn't care enough to try and figure out most of these puzzles. It's just so much easier to look up the answer online later than it is to actually try and figure it out. And this is very different from how I felt any of the Hearthstone puzzles, which Hearthstone also, it was 2 or 3 years, maybe even 4 years before they even introduced the idea of puzzles. And when they did introduce them, they were for the most part very creative and very fun. Sometimes they were like a little crazy, and you'd have enemies with 80, 90 health when usually they'd have like 30 or 40 health. But it usually had me enthralled and taught me something new about a character. Let's just start at the beginning with hint. Use facsimile to put Genesis artifact into your hand. Okay. We have 18 cards. And we need to get them down to 0. Can't take them more than 1 damage at a time. Yeah, most of these cards don't matter as far as what they do. Okay. And so we're going to use Facsimile to put a Genesis artifact in your hand. Which... I guess the question now would be... I guess you do this to start with. Then I suppose you do this. And then you play that.
Create a facsimile.
Random artifacts. Blazing artifacts. Different artifacts with different names. So I suppose you probably start with this, since it's free anyways. Okay. I'll go and Bane this character. Gets resonance. It's not activated there.
Let us go, sister.
Honestly, it might have been better to kill this with Bane. Let's see. Is this evolved? How do you know if something's evolved or not? I don't know. And all we're drawing is Goliath cards. I want to get this bifurcating artifact, but I don't think I can actually afford it. Yeah, I think I'm done. Like, you have to have artifacts with different names, and I don't see how I can even pull that off. This ability to give you 1 play point's nice and all, but it's not really gonna save the day. Yeah, I think you would have to severely focus not on
Now to create a
fighting
facsimile.
the weak people, but instead fighting the stronger people. Yeah, and you probably have to do this. Which we want to keep on dying, so. Yep, that one's evolved, so that one actually can't be destroyed with Bane. Yep, I'm done. I don't think there's any way I can figure this out. I don't even see the pattern to play enough cards to even start to think about doing 19 damage. Like, I can't even see enough of a pattern to get all of the characters out of the way, let alone do 19 damage later. Yep. And yeah, these are elite level puzzles, so I can't complain too much that they're too hard, but they're a little too hard. Use laser shells tortoise effect to put the Burminator into play, which is this Bearminator. Okay, so you do this, and then you do this. Okay, so now this is on the field. Cover 1 play point. At the end of your turn, if you have at least 5, deal 5 damage to a random enemy. Then if you have at least 3, deal 3 damage to all enemies. So 8 play point target. Meanwhile, we have something that could evolve, something that will summon an assembly. Guess you probably want this evolved ability. It puts a Salvation X Lumino. Yeah, I'm thinking that's probably what we want.
The congregation, they call for me.
And then they give you this facsimile, which I bet is a red herring. Whenever it attacks, let's just do that. You gain a play point. Now we could potentially make something. Yeah, there's so many cards here. This could do some damage. This could give us boosts. What can this reduce the cost of? Something like that.
Divine punishment.
Yeah, I just don't know where this goes. You play this, will it have rush?
I hope to unify nature and machine.
No. So you're basically just left with trying to play cards.
Summoning divine punishment.
Without really understanding.
The gods have been outrivaled.
Summoning divine punishment.
Instinct is what you truly believe in.
Everything belongs to me. It all comes down to power.
Summoning divine
So
punishment.
maybe I was supposed to reduce the cost of this one instead of the other one.
Omega Drive, limiters disengaged. Can't touch this. Good work, team.
But yeah, once again, this really is just putting this right in the headlights of
Divine punishment.
it not really seeming like there's anything to play here. Some kind of scenario here where you could play this, but this would also have to be given rush to attack. And you'd basically have to use facsimile to bring it back again. Yeah, I don't see a success here.
Inflated dreams is so oddly satisfying.
And yeah, laser shell tortoise to take the Bearminator onto the field, which then takes something up. Which then I guess if I evolved that and did that, I could maybe bring something else onto the field.
Now to create a facsimile.
For 5.
Ready yourself.
The congregation, they call for me. Throw your life away. I hope to unify nature and machine.
Yeah, and this just doesn't feel like this does anything for you.
My heart wasn't in it.
Instinct is what you truly believe in.
Everything belongs to me. It all comes down to power.
I guess this could have given rush to something else. And that could have helped fill the field. Make it a little bit more empty.
Gods have been outrivaled.
Omega Drive, limiters disengaged. Can't touch this. Good work, team.
One,
Summoning divine punishment.
2,
Summoning divine punishment.
3,
Summoning divine punishment.
4,
Summoning divine punishment.
5.
Summoning divine punishment.
Gives us this, which is as a Havencraft card. Not a Machina or Nature card anyways. So you'd still be close to a 50-50 shot in playing this, even if there was 2 spaces open, which maybe you could do to bring one of these 2 to the field. That still doesn't get you anywhere close to victory. I give up. Yep.
I can see.
Wasted hour, basically. And what can I say? From where I'm standing, Shadowcraft is what is this? Yeah, what is the name of even this game? Yeah, I just don't think it's worth your time to really struggle through those puzzles. Not when you have the already incredibly difficult struggle of getting through daily quests every single day, and the incredibly difficult struggle of trying to figure out the new cards from the new expansion, and the incredible difficult struggle of getting victory chests. It's just way too dogpiled onto it. It's way too much card gameplay. I am thinking I am willing to definitely risk it at this point and move over to the Pokemon card game as soon as we can get an even beta of it. Like, just, I don't care if the Pokemon card game is incredibly dumbed down and stupid and it's just baby's first card game, which really that is probably what it is going to be. But as long as it doesn't just reek of microtransactions, and as long as there's just not a ton of daily quests on it, I think I would totally jump over to that. In fact, I'm not past the point of even considering, just as crazy as it might sound, going back to Hearthstone. I don't really want to jump into Magic the Gathering, but yeah. At least Hearthstone's daily quests were more 3-day daily quests, much more reasonable. And comparing this to like the cell phone game I play that does have daily quests, I am doing considerably less to manage and play Destiny Child on my cell phone with its daily quest, even though, in all honesty, that is actually taking a decent amount of time still. Alright. So, moving forward from that wasted hour, let's go through the news very quickly here. And there kind of is a decent amount of news. Here we have a game on Steam, for instance, that's called Slow Living with Princess, which looks like it's a farming simulator game. At first glance, you might think it was one of these games that was more about nudity, but honestly, it feels like it's a little bit more family-friendly and kid-friendly than that. It's early access, 1019, English, Chinese, and Japanese. That would explain maybe why you're seeing a little bit of cleavage here, but they've kind of covered it up also. It feels like this was an adult game at first, and then they changed it. It frankly seems like it's almost like a daughter-raising simulator with the princess just kind of falling behind you the whole time. Half like daughter-raising simulator type game, although in this case not really daughter. And then half the time Stardew Valley. And I think the half the time that Stardew Valley is still going to be the part that is a little too objectionable for me. And frankly, the phrase slow living, it doesn't sound like an interesting video game experience. Video Game Chronicles. We've got mostly all the articles in a row here. I decided to open the tabs in a different order. Windows 11, claimed to be the best Windows ever for gaming, is now available. I don't see any reason why you would download it now. I think it makes a lot of sense to simply wait until Windows 10 decides it is just going to straight up force you into Windows 11, or if it never does that, then just live with Windows 10. Honestly, I don't know if there really is much of a reason to jump to Windows 11 anyways. The thing that they're not doing well is introducing a new DirectX that would be explicit to DirectX 11. So, yeah. It doesn't really feel like it's a necessary, you've got to have it now. Yeah, the selling points here. At some point after launch, it'll have the ability to launch Android apps, which I think pretty much just means Windows 11 has an Android Linux operating system built into it, a virtual machine, effectively. Auto high dynamic range and direct storage functionality, which direct storage is, I guess, their focus right now instead of DirectX visuals. Automatic high dynamic range will enhance will enhance any games with built on DirectX 11 or higher, but also I think you would need a high dynamic range monitor, which you probably won't. And direct storage is part of Xbox's Velocity architecture featured in the Series X and Series S. Direct storage lets games quick load assets to the graphics card without putting strain on the CPU, meaning titles can feature detailed game worlds and extremely fast speeds without long load times, which that's nice, I suppose. But they would need a high performance NVMe and the proper drivers to use direct storage, which is very possibly not the majority of people. Alright. Do this. And then do this.
That was almost amusing.
And then do this. Then end the turn. But yeah. That's very small selling points, in my opinion, compared to what a new operating system would like to have. Although in all fairness, most Linux versions of operating systems just come and go with very little fanfare, because the difference between Debian version 13 and Debian version 12 is just going to be like a major kernel upgrade, and the kernel operating, the low-level kernel of the operating system being changed. And once the kernel is upgraded, then that usually lets a lot of the other programs evolve to a newer version, and everything centers around what version of the kernel you're using, as far as what version of the software, the Linux software, you would be using. Whereas Windows, really no such thing like that at all. A program designed to run on Windows XP very likely may still run perfectly fine on Windows 11. Let's see. Let's go ahead and do this.
You crossed the line.
Do this. Do this.
Looks like I'm up.
And in the turn. Yep. I would say Windows is much more closer to changing its appearance, and frankly it just feels like it's trying to make itself more in line with Apple iOS. It feels like, which I guess maybe this is 10 years later, Microsoft finally admitting that they've maybe lost the hearts and minds of people who use PC, which, yeah, that is possible. It's believable, certainly.
All the fluffy hugs. Pain, go away.
Okay. Do we want to give +1/+1?
Come on, smile.
There's nothing to fear.
Yep. if anything, I feel like Windows is just going to continuously struggle, and Windows 10 probably was the right move to say, hey, you know what, we're not going to think of new features that are going to feature bloat into Windows 11. The whole Cortana thing, the OneDrive integration things, those are all ideas that should come about a little bit more naturally, and I don't think I want to actually play that because I don't have a daily quest around that. And a Windows 11 is going to look so much like a Windows 10 unless we just superficially change things. Also, right now is just like the worst time to potentially try and sell new hardware in the middle of the shortage. It would have made a lot of sense for Microsoft to say, hey, let's just put Windows 11 on the back burner until 2023 because nobody's going to be able to buy the hardware anyways. So we don't have any reason to push out new a whole new operating system. They could have pushed out new features, or they could have just been silent. But yeah, Windows 11 also heavily focusing on gaming really does throw in the towel around the idea of Windows being for anything else other than gaming, like movie production, photography, just general office work, things like that. They're either making the argument that all of those softwares have been as perfected as they ever will be, or they're making the argument that they don't care about that kind of service. Office Online annual revenue from Office 360, things like that. I haven't really heard Microsoft talk about any of that stuff, or even their Azure online servers. I really haven't heard a lot of talk about that either. Which, yeah, if they're going to go all focused on gaming and try to get more people to PC gaming, they're in this weird competition, certainly now, not against Apple, but against Linux and the Steam Deck. And Windows 11's offering in that case may very well have a just kind of failure scenario there. I don't think, guess if Windows 10 offered me an update, I'd have to really think about it. That's before I just jumped in to changing it. It feels like it would be an extra project and an extra day's worth of work for no good reason. Let's see. Video Game Chronicles says PlayStation 5 is on sale at Smith's Toy stores across the UK. We're still seeing enough shortages for the PlayStation 5 that anytime anybody seems to have any, it's worth mentioning. Let's see. Video Game Chronicle also says that the Switch OLED dock reportedly supports 4K 60 frames per second, even though the OLED doesn't. This may just be future-proofing, or the fact that the chip they chose to use was just HDMI 2.0 compliant, which by default I think may support 4K 60. Yeah. In reality, though, just because the chip may support it doesn't mean that the chip is actually ever going to support it. It may be a future-proofing concept. There definitely seems to be a lot of push to make the Jason Schreier Bloomberg News claim that they're working on a 4K Switch true. And I don't know if this isn't really just a case of them trying to back up their own other news reporters more than reality, because it doesn't really make sense to me. Like, it just seems crazy that... Interesting. At the end of the turn, that gives it rush. Then why could I attack at that point?
Show me the limits of your
I felt like it let me in the turn, then it gave me rush, and then let me play some more.
power.
But maybe not.
Lose yourself in this final dance. Frightened? Good.
I could believe that there's 4K capable dev kits in the sense that they gave some kind of PC to people who are making Switch games. But I don't really believe that the idea
I'll get it right this time.
that they are actually thinking about doing 4K 60. I just don't think Nintendo would be that forward-looking. If Nintendo was going to be that 4K forward-looking and do 4K 60, they would at some point need to put a Blu-ray player back into the Switch. Like, let's just realize that fact, which people are conveniently ignoring, is you'd have to pay Sony, which is part of the consortium, I think, that of the Blu-ray consortium. You'd have to play them to probably play Blu-ray videos, but otherwise it would be kind of ridiculous. Or at the very least to have a Blu-ray reader, which I imagine you still have to pay a license for that. And then you would have to have some kind of dock that you could put a Blu-ray disc into, that then would download that Blu-ray disc from that dock to the Switch. And then the Switch would have to have 25 to 50 gigabytes of space, more than what it has now, just for one game. And then once you start to get to those higher resolutions, are you really even... Is it really even worth the effort to have it be a portable device so much as just have a regular console at that point? And that would kind of make some more sense, as if they came out with a just whole new console that was designed to always be plugged in, maybe use the same Joy-Cons so they're not changing the Joy-Cons, played the same games but played them higher, and there was just this kind of cross-compatibility between the Switch, which pretended like it was Nintendo's new console, but in reality is more of a Game Boy replacement, or it could be potentially a Game Boy replacement, and then they'd have to split it all out. And I'm not sure people would be too happy if all of a sudden people said, oh, actually the Switch was never a console replacement, it was always a Game Boy replacement, here's the console. I do hear good things about the OLED version, so I think if you are going to buy a new Switch, you probably would want to buy the OLED version.
Is fighting and despair
But that's
all you know?
that's kind of it.
The dead have no need of words.
Unless, of course, you want to hack your Switch, which maybe I would want to do that. So at that point, it might make more sense to buy the original Switch or get it used and ideally not too scratched up. I don't know if there really is a point to buying the middle tier, like the second generation Switch, now that the OLED would be the third generation. Moving on, Ubisoft is revealing a new Ghost Recon project today. I don't think I really care, but I will say Video Game Chronicle has that article, so check it out. PlayStation 3 and Vita stores are removing credit card, debit card, and PayPal payment options. So I guess you would need to top up your PlayStation Store wallets to make purchases. And I imagine the storefront in itself will eventually be taken down. I haven't looked at my PlayStation 3 in years, so I don't know if it would be really that playable or usable, but whatever. Like, in the next couple of years, I probably should start to think about making the ultimate step up to getting a 4K ultra high definition Blu-ray player. But the one sticking point there would be, am I actually ever going to have time to sit down and watch Blu-rays? And I'm not sure that that is the case. I haven't in a very long time.
It looks like I'm up. No!
Let's see. New Xbox Game Pass titles for console, PC, and cloud have been dated, including Back 4 Blood, Destiny 2 Beyond Light, and the Rift Breaker. Back 4 Blood, I guess it hasn't come out yet. Maybe either that or nobody, people just are not talking about it. There's a whole list here of games you can check out. Also, a list of games leaving. Check out the article. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm gonna end up saying that a lot more.
You're in good hands.
I really wouldn't be surprised if Back 4 Blood actually has come out and I've just totally forgotten about any coverage of it because of the fact that it was a multiplayer game and seemed not to really catch that many people's attention. Ghost Recon Frontline is a free-to-play shooting offering a new take on the Battle Royale. Just looking at the screenshot, this looks boring. When you compare it to Fortnite and the bright colorfulness of it, and the fact that Fortnite has building, once you have to put something, a Battle Royale in the Ghost Recon universe, maybe that will attract some older gamer bros who like to play Ghost Recon type games, but I'm not sure how many of them actually exist. I'm not sure how many of them actually want to play a Battle Royale game. It feels like this would be more of a feature that would just come with the next Ghost Recon game instead of being a separate experience.
All the fluffy hugs.
That, yeah. In a lot of ways, this feels like the Operation Raccoon City multiplayer game that came out a couple of years ago and then just immediately disappeared because it was just a dumb idea. Let's see. Xbox has partnered with Adidas for a range of console-inspired sneakers. Suppose that's not a terrible idea. If you're dumb enough to buy high brand sneakers, something like this might make sense, and it doesn't particularly hurt Xbox's brand, in my opinion. It is just gonna feel silly. Do this.
It looks like I'm up.
Then do this.
Go away.
Okay. So I can't do anything more other than play this. So we hit the end turn. That gives a rush. And then that does end the turn. So it must have just been a case that the other player ended their turn without doing anything. The next Animal Crossing Direct is coming next week and will reveal Brewster, according to VideoGameChronicle.com. There's more important things to talk about today, though. A Twitch hack has happened, and it could be the biggest ever seen, claims the cybersecurity expert. Of course, this is from the BBC, and frankly, UK journalism kind of sucks. Because it's fairly sensational. But yeah, it sounds like the source code, from what I've seen of Twitch, which would mean anybody can make a Twitch competitor very easily now. Of course, Twitch could potentially try and sue anybody who makes a Twitch competitor if they feel like they've used their code, although that'd be kind of hard to prove in court when you're talking like database MySQL stuff code, which is fairly generic, and standard just HTML or PHP web pages. In a lot of ways, this could be the end of Twitch. Just the nail in the coffin that gives Amazon an excuse to shut it down, or at least fire a lot of people and shift it into something different. Although maybe if they fired a lot of people and shifted some other people in charge, Twitch would be run better. Anyways, seems like it also leaked payouts to people, which will probably be very interesting if we see. It's claimed that 81 Twitch streamers have been paid more than $1 million by the company. So if we get like what the average payout is, I can tell you the payout of me on Twitch is exactly $0.00. Never even got close to being monetized on Twitch. And so personally, if they get my account information, they're probably not getting much of anything. And sure, they may get access to the video files, but I don't think the video files even matter because they're public anyways. What if it is a 125 gigabyte torrent link, then that is not the video files being posted. That is just internal things. If anything, 125 gigabytes seems like quite a lot for a website, but Twitch is big, so I could see a lot of that being database stuff, and just the number of users. But yeah, if anything, for a layman, this Twitch hack, I think, just highlights once again that Twitch is run by incompetent people. People who should not be in charge and don't know what they're doing.
The greater your sin, the crispier I make you.
Let's see. We might talk about that story some more later. Pokemon will be coming to Universal Studios Japan in 2022. The theme park already has an expansion plan for Super Nintendo World, and I would assume that the Pokemon would come somewhere between or to the side of where the Donkey Kong world is. Kind of feel like the Universal Studios of Japan is going to end up just being 100% Nintendo themed, just because I don't think they have that much square footage available to them. Hey. Unless, I don't really know where Universal Studios Japan is. I don't know if it backs into like a forest and they're just clearing out the forest and the wildlife. I would assume it was more land they already owned, and it would have been other things or just undeveloped things, undeveloped area. Because the idea of being in Japan and just going, oh, we can build more, is kind of ridiculous. Even in the United States, like Disney World in Florida is only as big as it is. Disney World, Epcot, all of that is only that big because they bought a massive amount of land in secret nearly 60, 70 years ago, and it was swampland mostly too, so they've had to effectively build. I wouldn't be surprised if it was fairly accurate to describe all of Disney World as a floating island on swampland more than solid land. Arguably too, they very possibly built on something that should have been more of a nature preserve. Yeah. But yeah, the Florida politicians would definitely side with with Disney World at this point. There's probably little doubt that a Pokemon themed world, which isn't directly Nintendo because the Pokemon Company, which Nintendo just has a share in, but yeah, no doubt in my mind that it will be successful, although it might be a little bit more generic, particularly when you look at like Mario World and how that's built out. They really had to take a lot of characters and a lot of elements from different parts of different Mario games, and you don't have something here that just screams, oh, this is World 1-1 of Super Mario Bros. 1, or this is from Super Mario Galaxy. I think these lights probably are trying to be inspired by Odyssey or Galaxy. They kind of stand out, but yeah, you're having a lot of mix and match happen here. These trees with the fruits are definitely from Yoshi's Super Mario World and Yoshi time frame. And what is surprising, and I hadn't thought about it until just a second, it is fairly surprising that there is no Princess Peach's castle here. The highest point is a Finnish flag here, which is going way higher than Bowser's castle. It feels like at some point this skyline in the background, which I think is probably photoshopped, if not an actual painted wall, I think this back skyline, right about here, in the far distance, would be a Princess Peach castle, much like Disney World has Cinderella's castle or the Disney castle in the middle. Something that you may not even be able to access unless you're a VIP, something that may very well just always be far in the background. And something that I imagine is going to be very, very far away and very big. There's a lot of animation here, although here you can see this is real world depictions. A lot of animation characters and movement. Here's some kind of toy they're talking about. Oh, interesting too. Let us just take a moment to have a conversation. There has in the past been this false accusation that when somebody is depicted as white, the Japanese people think that that's a white, like, American person. And for Mario and Luigi, that probably is somewhat true now. It would be kind of weird to have these kind of like Brooklyn plumbers. But it is worth, I think, mentioning that if you just compare a fairly tanned person versus a fairly pale person, Japanese person, usually Japanese people are as pale as Mario is, and I would argue that when Mario Brothers 1 came out, they probably did think of him more as an Asian person in at least the development. Once you put the name Mario on it, they probably got away from that. So this is a really bad comparison and statement to even make at this point. But you can at least take from this that they aren't making these guys yellow, which would be really weird. Yeah, I think Miyamoto here being so tanned and having so much hair, which I would almost assume that this is plugs or a wig. It shows just how much of his time is spent primming himself and making himself presentable. For a Western audience. Yep. It's a much better thought, certainly, though. Where is Princess Peach's castle? And almost certainly is going to be a major castle that appears at some point as they continue to expand. It is also worth questioning, though, where is the next step as far as what they can add. You've got a Donkey Kong, you've got a Pokemon coming. You already have Mario. I seriously doubt there's going to be a Star Fox world. If it is, it's going to be very small. I seriously doubt there's going to be a Metroid world. If it is, it's going to be very small. I would more expect them just to continue to expand the Mario world and the Donkey Kong world than go in any other direction. They could make a Splatoon world, but that would be doubling down on Splatoon staying popular, which is a bit of a risk, certainly.
You were done for. Let him go!
Let's see.
Why is this so hard?
There's nothing to fear.
You do also run into the problem of if somebody was to go to the Japanese Universal Studios, it would feel weird, certainly, to try and jump between the two. It probably is close to impossible to actually visit the rest of Universal Studios if you go to the Super Nintendo world. I bet there's not really gates that connect the two, and I bet you will spend a full day at Nintendo World or Universal World. You kind of have to question what Universal Studios properties would even be that interesting to a Japanese audience. Like, you'd have to really think about that. And certainly there's the thought of where is the Studio Ghibli world, which that would make a lot more sense too. If Studio Ghibli came out with their own Universal Studios like theme park with My Neighbor Totoro and Spirited Away and Secret of Arrietty, Ponyo, things like that. I guess you probably wouldn't want to have Grave of the Fireflies, which I believe is a Studio Ghibli movie. You probably don't want a riot around that, which Grave of the Fireflies is a horrifically sad animation about two orphans starving to death after World War II and just being not cared for as orphans. And it's really about like the horrors of a post-World War Japan and a post-war anywhere. But yeah, ignoring Grave of the Fireflies, almost every other Studio Ghibli thing is super kid-friendly, or at least super popular, if maybe slightly not kid-friendly. And personally, if I was traveling to Japan and just vacationing in Japan, I would be much more interested in going to a Studio Ghibli Universal Studios World than I would be going to a Nintendo World, because you're counter-programming against potentially going and doing a tour at Nintendo itself, which maybe Nintendo doesn't do tours. It's very possible they don't. But yeah, you're highly likely to have a Nintendo World come to the United States and other countries in the next 10 years. You're completely unlikely to see a Studio Ghibli world anywhere outside of Japan. It's the difference between going to like a Lego store in Japan versus going to a game shop in Japan, or going to Akihabara. Like, yeah, finding uniquely Japanese things that you can't get otherwise. It's way more intriguing to me than just going to a generic Lego shop, which are, for the most part, well, they do have some exclusives per shop around the world. Going to one Lego store in Japan is not that different from going to a Lego store in the United States, because they're all owned by the same company anyways.
You're in good hands.
Alright, moving on. According to Video Game Chronicles, Black Ops Cold War Season 6 patch notes details weapon tuning and new content. If you're interested in that, check out this article. I am not.
I'll see you in purgatory.
Just a lot of text there. This is a really long article, but I guess they are just copy and pasted bulleted pieces of information. Yeah, Video Game Chronicles has reviewed the Nintendo Switch OLED is a striking upgrade for portable players. It's not the 4K model we're hoping for, but the Switch updated display is a huge improvement. And I guess that's what Nintendo was hoping for too, is that people would start seeing the OLED version in the wild. I guess the question is, are they AMOLEDs or are they just OLEDs? And I should have looked that up a long time ago and didn't even think about it. And I definitely should look up what the difference is.
The crispier I make you.
Let's see if we can find out the difference here. AM OLED versus OLED. Let's see. There's a little significant difference between, because the term is used by Samsung to market its OLED. So it's a Samsung thing only. Alright. Apparently, Samsung, it contains an additional layer of TFTs and follows backplane technologies.
You have summoned the blade of purgation here.
So I bet the Switch is not using Samsung screens, and I bet it's not an AM OLED. Although I don't think, looking at this description, like that really matters too much. And this is an interesting thing. The official Steam Deck teardown video warns users not to open it. Which, okay, that's fair. Don't open it. but then they put a teardown video to kind of, if anything, this is probably like one of the best ways to make something make people less likely to open it, is just show them what's inside and show them that it is unlikely to feel like something you could mess around with and successfully upgrade. So, yeah, sorry, I went quiet there. Immediately what I can see here is that there is a lot of room for improvement on this circuitry. Unless this here is a air gap for reverberance as far as a subwoofer and a speaker, this seems like this is totally missing something. I see a ribbon cable here going all the way over the battery, and under another ribbon cable, and to a second circuit board. I see ribbon cable here, I see ribbon cable here, which looks like it probably is connecting to a subboard, which is probably the touchpad. Just under here you can see another subboard. There is a way to make layered circuit boards that are directly on top of other circuit boards. If you want to go that route, they've kind of not done that. It seems like there's really no reason for this circuit board to be disconnected from this circuit board so much. It feels like this is designed to be modified or repaired way too much compared to like an iPhone, which is barely designed to be repaired. Yeah, you've got your big fan, you've got this giant heat sink, so that it's kind of like bringing in air, I think, from the top, it would be my guess, and down the bottom, or vice versa, down up through the bottom and vice versa. You have a pretty big battery, not particularly power balanced here as far as weight, so I wouldn't be surprised if they had to make some adjustments. I have no idea if this is like a second battery or what here, but here you have another ribbon cable, and like this board feels like it should just be connected to this board. They warn that if you take it apart, it will lose some drop stability, and that there are self-setting screws, so if you over tighten them, you will potentially damage the circuit board, which usually you don't use self-setting screws. You use threaded screw posts in small electronics. Like over here you can see another giant board, more ribbon cables. This just feels really badly designed, whereas it would make a lot more sense at most that there was one specific board. I guess the thumbsticks are always going to be white on the base, which I don't like that. It'd make a lot of sense for there to be one giant circuit board here, one giant circuit board here, and one connecting circuit board here, and none of these ribbon cables. It also seems kind of insane that data would be jumping from this side to this side that much. And there's a whole other circuit board over here too, and you'd think that really this all would be one. If anything, it should really, just for rigidity, it should just be one giant circuit board with a cutout in the middle, if there needs to even be a cutout in the middle. I don't see a point where the M2 slot or a surface mount memory chip would go. Is it here, maybe? Yeah, you just have like another connector and another, what looks like battery. It feels like there's two batteries. Or unless that's the power supply transformer. Yeah, here's your M2 slot. If you were going to put in more things, it is totally in the wrong place. If you made a cutout of this heatsink, it could have been replaceable without opening anything else, and they just didn't bother to do it. If anything, this really just shows that this is a first generation design of hardware. It's bad. It's not good. You very well may be better off waiting. Yeah. There's really no reason for this to play out like this at all. Like, ideally you would want to start with the battery in the middle place, and they probably did start with the battery in the middle, and then they said, oh well, we need a blower fan, and we want the blower fan to be in the middle because it's away from their hands. Okay, fair enough. And since that, then we would put the transformer, which is probably slightly heavier than the battery here, assuming that is a transformer. Why would there be a transformer there, though? No, that can't be a transformer. This has to just be some kind of weird battery, but why 2 batteries? That doesn't make any sense either. Like, I have no idea what this is supposed to be, and I don't know why it's there. Yeah. I don't know why this circuit board over here is this big. And yet it's still 4 different circuit boards separate. I don't know why this circuit board is 4 different circuit boards. I don't know why none of this is connected. It's not that hard to potentially cut out the center of silicon, particularly if you're making a lot, and just have them recycle the silicon wafers that get cut out. Could you make a battery replaceable in this? You could definitely have done a lot better. You could have definitely had a specific battery compartment with attachments and a way in which a battery could be removed, and then sell replaceable batteries, which they have not even given any thought to. As far as, hey, how could I play this and swap out a battery? I suppose you might have a battery bank, but I'm not even sure that this kind of device would be able to use a battery bank, because it would just draw out too much current, I would suspect. You would definitely have a window for the M2 slot. There seems to be 0 heat piping, really, besides what's under here, where you could have had the entire back and the entire device be a little bit thicker and have a lot more heat cooling and passive cooling. There's plenty of room here to potentially have one giant sheet of metal, particularly if you're not trying to replace the battery ever. And a giant sheet of metal could also add significant rigidity to your device so it doesn't crack or twist. It definitely feels like maybe there's supposed to be like a rumble pack. I could definitely see some kind of vibration thing going here later on. There's not that much here that wouldn't have just let you potentially make them like Joy-Cons and make them detachable. Although I don't know if there's really a need for that. What else can we really take from this? Probably not that much, really. I'm less enthusiastic about the Steam Deck after seeing that teardown and the level of design on it than I was before. So they really didn't do themselves any favors. As somebody who has seen enough teardowns to at least have half an idea, and somebody who has had education in electronics and knows what the insides of cell phones and circuits look like.
living in despair.
Apple
all
would
you know.
definitely not have
Prepare for defeat.
made a device that was that unoptimized, I guess that's the right phrase to use. Moving on. 101 Industries and Soleil have announced a third-person action game called Wanted Dead for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. I think we already had talked about Wanted, yeah. But Gametsu now has that article. PlayStation Now adds The Last of Us Part 2, Fallout 76, and Final Fantasy 8 Remastered, and more in October. Let's see. Aeon Must Die is now on the Switch. Which is weird how they spell this. A-E, and then the other half of an O. Square Enix has trademarked Valkyrie Elysium in Japan. Gung Ho Online Entertainment has trademarked a phrase called Deathverse. Apparently there was a scare here that Watanabe, the Wildman producer and CEO, Haruto Watanabe, had died. This was a virtual, so Panzer Dragoon Voyage Record was a virtual reality Panzer Dragoon omnibus game. And I assume when they say omnibus game, that means it's going to recover everything. The CEO is not dead. And several friends. So, in a bit of fake news in the video game world, or just poor news reporting, there was, I guess, the thought that someone was dead, and it wasn't. Of course, in the middle of this whole pandemic, like, so many people could be dead. If anything, what you take from that, or at any point, yeah, and I guess that could be the truth no matter what. What you should take from this more than anything is that Wildman, as a company, seems to be very reactionary. There is some real stupidity in the thought of pushing the idea that corporations are people and that they can thus be their own individual ideas, own individual personalities and personas. It's really stupid to say, well, the CEO died, thus we're going to cancel a project and probably go out of business, which is the subtext I would take from that. Like, that this Wildman company cannot possibly even continue. And in all fairness, that's probably true. If you're in a small company, if you're not working for like Walmart or something that literally profits from its employees dying by making life insurance bets on its employees, if you're not working for a big company and the CEO dies, it probably either emotionally affects everyone so much that the business can't continue, or it just throws the whole business into such chaos that it can't really continue. Which really does highlight the fact that corporations should never be considered people, and they really should just be much more like sole proprietorship type experiences. And as somebody who's personally, I think that sole proprietorship should be the only thing allowed, in that the idea of limited liability corporations or incorporating in general creates too big of a business, and big business is not good for society in overall, in general. It just isn't. And I don't think you should be able to make a business that is so big that it has to sell shares, and that all of a sudden this business is owned by entire investment groups and millions of people own shares in a corporation. The thought that rising tide would lift all boats has been proven over and over again to not really work. But yeah, I would be a little cautious pre-ordering any Panzer Dragoon games going forward if they're that reactionary. Of course, that may very well also be a Japanese thing. It's totally believable that they would see it as just honoring and respecting their fallen CEO. But it really is no way to do business even in Japan. And one would have to assume that this was either a huge mistake or a disgruntled employee, but for a Japanese employee to be so disgruntled that they would claim somebody's dead is actually kind of hard to believe. So I would have to assume it was just an honest mistake. The Japanese people in general, I mean, they didn't even really have last names for the peasants until a couple hundred years ago, so one Watanabe versus another Watanabe is easy to confuse. Let's see.
The horizon gives me inspiration.
Do I want to do damage to this right now? I don't think I do. Moving on, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate DLC character Sora from Kingdom Hearts has been announced. I thought it was going to be the person who is, I think, finally going to stop working on Smash Brothers, because he's been working on it for like 14 years. They had done, I guess, a fan request poll on who wanted to be seen. People said Sora. Sora does make sense. I'm a little surprised he isn't already in the game. As somebody on the outside who doesn't really know what characters are in the game, yeah, I still am wondering if Master Chief is actually in the game. But bringing in Sora as the last character also kind of means that none of the other Disney characters or anything like that are going to show up. So, and it seems like to accomplish getting Sora in as a character, they basically had to agree to let a cloud version of Kingdom Hearts games from Square Enix be available on the Switch, and they had to do a whole bunch of negotiation. Sora being a Final Fantasy character originally, or being more in the Final Fantasy world, I imagine you just have to do the Square Enix thing. But like, and so you're probably not having to directly negotiate with Disney. It once again, I think, highlights the problem of Disney, or Kingdom Hearts in general, including Disney, is that there's just a lot of licensing that's going to happen there. I am not getting any victories today, as usual. It's becoming very typical. Yep. Personally, I guess I can't really care. I've tried to play a Kingdom Hearts game once. It was too long, it was too grindy, and it was just straight up boring before I even got to an interesting Disney world, Disney section.
This one's for my family.
If Kingdom Hearts, Kingdom Hearts totally feels like it's for little kids, for people who would like Disney, but it totally fails to actually work for little kids, unlike Pokemon, which is a much more dumbed down and kid-friendly RPG. I could responsibly hand Pokemon to a kid and say, hey, here, play Pokemon, you'll enjoy it. It would be insane to hand a Kingdom Hearts game to a kid and say, here, you'll enjoy this. They totally wouldn't. If anything, Kingdom Hearts might be highlighting the difference between what 40, 50, 60-year-olds today who grew up playing JRPGs and spending 400 hours playing a JRPG, the difference between what they think is an acceptable amount of time and effort to put into a game versus what is the more realistic expectations that the West has kind of always had, and even I think Japan and the East are starting to realize is that with more opportunity to play more games, nobody wants to grind for 200 hours. Even the Final Fantasy remake, I think, probably shows some realization of that. And so I would almost say Kingdom Hearts at its 20th anniversary needs a full-on reboot, a abridged version of the game, which a lot of old games could use a reboot, abridged version. So Gametsu has a Kingdom Hearts 20th anniversary trailer, reveals events and more. Cloud versions of HD 1.5 plus 2.5 remix, HD 2.8 final chapter prologue, and Kingdom Hearts 3 plus Remind are coming to the Switch. Yeah. And the Final Fantasy element is kind of more the problem, I would say, with Kingdom Hearts and trying to be kid-friendly in general, is that even if you did have a kid that would play through all the Kingdom Hearts game, I don't think I want them playing Final Fantasy games. Yeah, it definitely feels like what they're trying to do, or what they were trying to do 20 years ago, was convince kids that Final Fantasy was cool. And yeah, I don't know if kids generally bought into that idea. Let's see. Yeah. I would really have to question, like, who Kingdom Hearts is for on the Switch. I feel like if you were old enough to have played Kingdom Hearts 10, 20 years ago, you're probably either on the Xbox or PlayStation or PC at this point. And even if you were an adult who played on the Switch occasionally, I think you probably aren't playing Kingdom Hearts on the Switch. I wouldn't even really consider playing Kingdom Hearts on Steam if it was available on Steam, which maybe it is at this point. Like, I just don't have the extra time to even try for that kind of idea. Alright, this is not working. Alright, let's see the missions and let's find something else that we can try and win. 4 ranked Dragoncraft or Havencraft. I guess I could have been playing ranked Dragoncraft. Gametsu says Arcade Paradise has been delayed to spring of 2022. I'm not going to pronounce 2022 right for the entire year. Yeah, Arcade Paradise seems to be a collection of arcade games and a more open a arcade you wander around a little bit. So it's like probably an arcade running simulator with some mini games is probably the best way to describe it. Let's see. Gametsu says Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin details Neon, Princess Sarah, battle actions and difficulty settings and more. Which, yeah. I will say the Strangers in Paradise game does seem to be more fantasy than most of the Final Fantasies we've seen in the past couple of years. This character's outfit is odd in that you have kind of like machined pleats, and then you look down at her shoes, and those are pretty much like modern technology shoes, and it's not really what I was thinking I would see in this universe. Where this outfit, yeah, this could feel more like a fantasy outfit sewn by like seamstresses a lot more. And then these outfits here that the guys are wearing, which are incredibly black and boring, definitely feel more like something that would have been made by a lettersmith and handmade. Now the pull string here on this hoodie is a little weird and looks like modern technology, but the rest of these outfits don't scream a universe with modern clothing technology. And then the rest of this game does not really scream taking place in a world with modern technology. It looks much more like a magical world, and it looks dark and it looks boring. I mean, as shallow as it may be, I have to say, there's such a visual appeal to have somebody like the girl from Atelier Ryza as your main character, being colorful, being in kind of an anime art style, being female and attractive to look at from the back, and just being in a unique fashion design. Like that makes every screenshot in Atelier Ryza way more interesting than this screenshot here, where I'm seeing a glowing red orb creature, maybe. I can't even really tell what it is. It's just a blob of red. And I'm seeing the back of a character, of a male character. His hair's cut short, so it's uninteresting. The fashion on his clothing is questionable. How do you get the belts on, strapped down in the back? Somebody would have to help you put that on. But yeah, there's just visually not anything to see in that screenshot. Same is kind of true here. Looking at the back of this character, it's not that interesting. Look at the front of this monster. It's mostly blackness. Like, I would almost hope they would do like a Borderlands thing and just change the visual effects drastically on what the characters look like before this gets released, because this is a lot of darkness. It feels way too edgy for a modern game. And then they're showing off menus, which that's pretty dull too. Then they're showing off a concept drawing of an area that's way too dark. Even your concept art is too dark. Like even the vampire game that came out a couple of years ago was brighter looking than this. And then they're showing off some weapons, which I'm not particularly impressed by. Yeah. This is one of these cases where they are trying to hype up and get people interested in a game, and they're actually failing and anti-hyping me with what they're displaying. Usually, Japanese game developers put out highly polished, at the barest minimum possible amounts of information, and instead they've gone the other way, and they've given out too much information that is very unpolished. Let's see. Komatsu says Babylon's Fall closed beta test phase 2 report. Phase 3 dated. Which, okay, whatever. I don't think I can be that interested in Babylon's Fall any more than I could be interested in Strangers in Paradise until it's actually out and I decide to figure out whether it's an MMO or not. Let's see, Gamatsu has the Famitsu review scores for issue 1714. And yeah, here we have a Idolmaster Starlight Season screenshot. So Earth Defense Force 2017 for the Switch gets 30 out of 40. That's pretty low. eFootball 2022 gets 34 out of 40. That's pretty good. And Idolmaster Starlight Season for the PS4 gets 37 out of 40. That's fairly high. Particularly when you compare it to Metroid Dread, which is getting 34 out of 40. And a game called Monarch I don't even recognize, which is getting 30 out of 40. So here is Famitsu, which is probably the reviewer of record, most respected reviewer of record that I know of in Japan, saying that for their 4 reviewers, they find Idolmaster Starlight Season to be the most attractive and best made game for this week, skipping over Nintendo's Metroid Dread and beating it. So that definitely goes to show where their interest is, where the Japanese audience interest probably is too. Here we have a game called Monarch, which has a demo launching October 8th in Japan. And see, here's, even if you're not going for the anime art style, I would say the sharp contrast here would work way better in Strangers in Paradise. Like, make your shields bright white and shiny. Make sure there is metal all over the place that shines in contrast with the black. Because, in all honesty, this outfit that this character is wearing is mostly black too, but it has a little emblem. It has a blouse shirt under it to give a white contrast. It has 2 belts, and it has white socks, but then the white socks also have a black lines, yellow lines, black lines to really attract your attention. And then you have a very different character here where he has this long flowing skirt, and he has white all on his arm braces, and then he has this short cape, and they all seem to have helmets. And then this one has a long flowing cape and a giant white mask and a giant white sword. And even though the majority of the inside of the cape is black, and you can barely even see anything here, I see a little bit of texture and details. And then you see the leggings that this character is wearing, probably a female character if I was to guess, are dark, but they're kind of bluish black instead of just solid black. I guess that's kind of true for this too. So you're going off solid black, and yeah, red glowing eyes, blue eyes, bright yellow hair, red hair, different blue long flowing hair, totally different outfit. Again, here you have a skirt that barely has any detail in it at all. It's just kind of a square pattern, and then white either leggings or just white legs. This character may be wearing glasses, but then you have this giant coat that also focuses on that. Then you have a giant hood with armor. And then you have a necklace. This one also seems to have some kind of neck armor. Then you have a different one. Like, every single one of these characters was thought and designed visually to stand out and stand apart from the other characters in the game. And there's real thought, at least in that one image. Even if the game itself doesn't really even look like this one teaser image is way more attractive than Strangers in Paradise was. Let's see. Moving on, Gamatsu has Coffee Talk Episode 2, Hibiscus and Butterfly, adds a PS4, Xbox One, and Switch versions. Okay. That's, I guess, good to know. I don't know if I'm ever going to get around to playing Coffee Talk, though. Let's see. Gamatsu says a roguelike side-scrolling beat-em-up game, Immortal, and the Death That Follows has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. Which, yeah, we've got a little bit of a video here we can watch. This game might be a little too neon, and it might be a little too much of a beat 'em up that's focused on showing QuickTime events, where arguably QuickTime events may not really work in the actual beat 'em up games. But that may very well have just been a cutscene. Like, you have a slight danger, certainly, in cutscenes and QuickTime events for beat 'em up games. You can have something happen where you like kick somebody off the side of the screen or towards the front of the screen or something like that. And we've seen that in pretty old arcade beat 'em up games even, but that there is a real danger in pausing the game flow to show a cutscene to defeat a low-level minion when there's 20 other low-level minions on the screen. So you can really only show those finisher moves once there's nobody else on the screen, and that's usually how people would play it and know how to do those kinds of cutscenes.
If I turned tail and ran, I wouldn't be a dragon.
Let's see. Gamatsu says the classic shoot 'em up Glade Lancer is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch on October 15th.
If I turned tail and ran,
I don't
I wouldn't be a
really
dragon.
recognize this game if it's really supposed to be a classic, but in all fairness, I wouldn't really recognize any side-scrolling shooter other than something like Contra, and that's about it. These are definitely a style of game that was very, very popular in the past, and to my mind and my only interest, at least, have completely lost any what's the right word to use here? Appeal? Yeah. They've completely lost any appeal.
Too late for
I'll be
everything.
back for round 2.
You don't know when to quit.
You're on.
Yeah, I guess we'll skip this because this is just kind of an interview. Let's see.
I'll head the vanguard.
Yeah, Gamatsu has a interview here between
I've been keeping this in reserve.
I Games and Strictly Limited Games, or they had an interview with United Games Entertainment talking about localizing and publishing niche Japanese games for the West. We really don't have interviews on Gamatsu ever, so this is like the first one I've even seen. Which maybe that indicates that Gamatsu is getting a little bit more attraction. What would this follower's attack be? Draw 2 cards. Sure.
My heart is a garden pearl.
It's too late for everything.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter which one I evolved. There. Let's see. Commander says a game called Mona More launches October 14th. This really does not look like anything of interest. Here we have a GameDeveloper.com obituary for the former Starbreeze Studios CEO, Mikhail Nuramonk. He was twice the CEO and a longtime executive. He died of cancer. At least Game Developer is finally putting right in the byline the subtitle how people are dying now. Particularly now with the pandemic, it's important to list whether or not what they died of, otherwise you're going to make some assumptions here. We definitely are getting to the point where the people in charge are so old that they are starting to just die of cancer. Fairly often. Do we want to evolve something here? An attack?
There's a lot more where that came from. Oh, I'm such a wimp.
The thing I'd criticize GameDeveloper.com still with this though is that you're getting 3 sentences in a paragraph about what he did for his entire life. His entire career is being boiled down to 3 sentences. And then you have like a quote here that gets you another paragraph. Otherwise you have a single sentence paragraph here. And then you have maybe a single sentence paragraph or 2 sentence paragraph here, which is yet another quote. So if you'd taken out all of this section that were quotes, the amount that GameDeveloper.com has written is this much, which is very little for an obituary. And I think GameDeveloper.com and just video game news sites in general need to get better about having their obituaries pre-written for anybody who's ever been in the video game industry, instead of waiting till the last second or just copying and pasting what is effectively just a LinkedIn post. Because it's just not enough information. I think an obituary in something even like Bloomberg would almost certainly have more information in it than that.
I'll be back for round 2.
For anybody who was notable and passed away. And then this is probably not the time to mention it, but it probably should be somewhat mentioned that Starbreeze Studios as a company has kind of a interesting history of controversy, if I recall correctly, and so there might be room there to say, to learn more about Starbreeze Studios, click here, and then have a list of all the recent articles about Starbreeze. Or to talk about and connect stories that have been reported in the past to this person as whether or not he was in charge during the time controversies, what may have happened at Starbreeze, assuming there actually are controversies. I think there were. And I wonder if this isn't another situation where you very possibly are getting Starbreeze Studios being run poorly because the person at the top is dying of cancer and thus distracted Should I evolve any of these guys? Guess not. GameDeveloper.com says, express yourself designing an inclusive character creator for Ollie Ollie World. Which, Ollie Ollie World is, I guess, the attempt at making a...
You want the world? Then come and get it.
Making a open world idea. Or an open world skating board game for kids. What's funny here is while I see the shoes, I don't really see this pattern on the socks. So that just disappeared. I suppose this is the shirt, but I mean, the cut around the arm here makes this look more like a tank top, where here it seems fairly tight. I guess I see the jeans and I see the knee pads, but I don't see the belt. I don't see the hair tie. I don't see a hair color or skin color or anything like that, or just body model. If anything, I would say this is anatomically wrong. Like, these seem like really long legs and really tiny feet and a really big head. But then this Jefferson here, I assume this is what goes on the bottom of your skateboard, but they're not even showing it. So, yeah. While character creators can be interesting, trying to get potentially what this feels like, and I'll just put my own opinion here, it feels like they're trying to get social justice points for saying they have an inclusive character creator without really even talking about or focusing in on making a good skateboarding game. Which the #1 challenge for Ollie Ollie World is going to be making a good skateboarding game. When you look at the screenshot, you have somebody with a prosthetic leg, and you have somebody who is drawn anatomically incredibly incorrect. Super short legs, super fat as a character. But if they're going weird, that's fine. But then, like, this guy's crotch, for lack of a better term, is like way down here, and his head is at the same level as this guy, and yet this guy's super long legs are here and his crotch is there. Like, that just doesn't line up at all. And while this character's a little bit closer, she's pretty much in line with this character too, and I don't know if she actually has eyes or if the implication is that she just has this headband single eye. This guy also looks fairly old. And then I don't know what they're really doing with the knee pad thing, because here you have characters without knee pads, without knee pads, without knee pads, elbow pads on this guy, and then no elbow pads on any of the other characters except for this one. In the back, I assume that's elbow pads and not a swimming floaty. So, yeah. I don't know if this is trying to be kid friendly. They definitely aren't making everybody wear helmets or pads. Yeah. The main concern, though, certainly is going to be about how the game actually plays, and it doesn't really matter how nice of a character you can create. If anything, I think character creations systems have failed kind of miserably to at least establish a baseline idea, and the hope is that the Unreal Engine's steps towards more random generation of people and quicker generation of random NPCs might establish some form of standard, like a true standard people could use, where you could say, I want my character to always have blonde hair. That should be available in almost every game. And if not, then you would convert it over for your specific game for whatever reason that they can't have blonde hair. I'd want their eyes to be, say, 4 centimeters apart And yeah, you just kind of a basic language there, an advanced programmable interface, maybe not even necessary, just a basic language where you can say, this is my character, I created him, I want him to look like this. Nintendo has tried to do that with the Miis, it didn't get adopted. Microsoft tried to do it with the avatars, it didn't really get adopted. I don't know if Sony ever even tried to do it, but it certainly didn't get adopted. And I totally get the idea that a general template of a character I make in something like Skyrim is not going to look anything like something in Ollie Ollie World, but you could definitely have the base concept plugged in. Generally speaking, I think if you play as a girl, you probably play as a girl always. If you play as a boy, you probably play as a boy always in games, unless the game just doesn't give you the option. So I definitely don't spend any extra time trying to make a character look good in almost every game that I've ever played, and almost every game that I've ever played hasn't really tried to have much of a it really hasn't tried to have much of a character creation function. Anyways, like, I know you could do it in The Witcher 3, but in retrospect, changing The Witcher 3's haircut was just a total waste of time. And I don't think anybody cares one bit about changing your appearance in Cyberpunk 2077. And even in that was supposed to be a major focus, that you could change your appearance and look however you wanted to look. And still, the rest of the problems with Cyberpunk overemphasized those problems and underemphasized any ability to create a custom character.
There's a lot more where that came from.
I'll see you in purgatory.
GameDeveloper.com says he has a developer insight, is what they're calling it, using a lemon-shaped structure to create sanguine open world of Sable. We had to make a lot of things that weren't interdependent and could live without each other. I've never heard of the idea of a lemon-shaped structure. But what I can tell you is that the coverage I've seen of this game is that it plays horribly and is incredibly glitchy. So, designing with a lemon-shaped structure probably is not a good way to design a game. And if anything, maybe that is the only press that they could even build up for themselves, is just talk about their development of their game to GameDeveloper.com and not focus on the fact that it desperately needs patching. And even if it wasn't glitchy, it doesn't sound like anybody has gone through this Sable and found it particularly amazing. It feels very much like somebody tried to steal the idea of Zelda Breath of the Wild in visuals and totally could not actually make a game. And I think that only even makes sense if you assume that this floating hovercraft item that you fly around on was in development before the concept of changing it to Breath of the Wild visuals was implemented. Otherwise, you would just be wearing, you'd just be riding a horse, which would make more sense if you were making a Breath of the Wild clone. Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says the head of Arcane Lion has left after almost 17 years at the Deathloop studio. It's not uncommon for somebody to leave after a game has been released. Deathloop, I don't think, is particularly well received or popular. So, Romuld, I don't know how you actually pronounce that first name, Romuald Capron, departs to pursue new challenges and spend more time with his family. You shouldn't say both of these because that blatantly points out that it's a lie and that you've been asked to leave and / fired because Deathloop did not succeed. Well, in all fairness, I think they probably knew that Deathloop was not going to succeed well months before it was released. I don't see anybody with any like credibility looking at the game while they're developing it, and unless they were just blinded by ignorance, I think anybody could have seen that it was going to be a problematic release compared to even their previous releases. But yeah, you definitely say you either are pursuing new challenges or you're spending more time with your family. You don't say both, because those are contradictory claims. Working for a company for 17 years should pretty much keep you in that company until retirement. And this guy does not look quite old enough to be ready for retirement. And he isn't claiming to retiring either. And if anything, that may slightly highlight the problem that we're going to see increasingly happen in the video game industry as older people get kicked out so they can hire cheaper, newer people, and we're going to see potentially a brain drain of skilled top-level senior programmers. Although, maybe not, because we may just be seeing a drain of management people that really don't matter as much. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says Unity's big branding revamp brings new logos for the company and its products. So they've updated their logo. Arguably, Unity should be updating their logo fairly frequently, like every couple of years, because the truth is, you see the Unity logo in a lot of games, and if you're seeing the logo in a lot of games and it looks like the old logo, that tells you generally when the game was made and what version of Unity it used. Every new major version of Unity should have had a new logo around it. That being said, I think there's probably bigger concerns around Unity than just a logo, in that the way they have done their business lately seems to be less focused on allowing small content creators to use their product cheaply, and instead seems to be more focused on trying to license to the big AAA developers, whereas most big AAA developers aren't going to use Unity as much as they're going to use Unreal Engine. There are several other logos here for, I guess, sub parts of their code, but I could not tell you specifically what any of these stands for. Like, all of these would be subparts of the Unity code, I'd assume. And as a casual observer, not a lot to say there. In what is cautiously optimistic news, I would say. No, just wearing my opinion on Randy Pitchford on my sleeve here. I don't think Randy Pitchford is a good CEO. Like, doesn't matter if he's a good person. Doesn't matter if he's just a total jerk. Doesn't matter if he's a lunatic. All of which may be true. He's not a good CEO in the sense that he didn't do right by his employees, and he didn't do right by shareholders in a lot of actions he took, including himself as almost certainly the majority shareholder of Gearbox. And up until this point, it has seemed like there was close to zero chance that we would ever see a Gearbox that didn't include Randy Pitchford in some way. And we still aren't seeing that. But it does seem like somebody finally taught him to shut his mouth. Or he just lost interest. Gearbox was acquired by Embracer Group. And I think it's been kind of secretly known, an open secret that was leaked out, that Randy Pitchford has been trying to sell Gearbox for at least 3 or 4 years and kind of screw anybody that has to be screwed in the process of selling it and getting a payout. Kind of even before major controversies happened around Randy Pitchford, it seems like there were behind the scenes troubles. And I wouldn't be surprised one bit if in his final success of selling Gearbox to Embracer Group, in whatever legal way he sold it, I'm not even sure what the legalities there are, they may have finally said, okay, we don't need you, you can step down now, or start the process of stepping down. And he's not completely gone. The Chief Technical Officer, Steve Jones, is now the company president, not to be confused with the Chief Executive Officer, although sometimes those are the same thing, depending on the structure of your company. But in the subtitle here, Randy Pitchford is stepping away from Gearbox Software, but will still be in charge of Gearbox Entertainment Company, the studio's parent operation. So, he's made kind of like this parent company. So he's no longer the CEO. And instead of having a chief executive officer, they are giving a different title to Steve Jones as president, which seems kind of ridiculous and silly. Pitchford's departure from the role doesn't mean he's done with Gearbox, however. He'll continue to serve as president of Gearbox Studios, the company overseeing the film and television adaptations, which he has been really more focused on. And he will be the CEO and president of the Gearbox Entertainment Company, which oversees both operations. The question certainly still comes down to how does Embracer Group really own Gearbox at that point? Like I guess it's just kind of different paperwork, and certainly it's confused, and it's designed to be confusing. Let's see. Jones, to focus more on Steve Jones, is a 22-year veteran, not year old. That would be a little too young to be the president of a company. 22-year veteran of Gearbox Studios with credits of Half-Life: Opposing Force, the original PC port of Halo, and the original Brothers in Arms, which those credits probably go to anybody that's been at Gearbox for a long time. He was the technical director on Borderlands and Borderlands 2, so he made the good Borderlands games, I guess. He'll be overseeing production and development of multiple AAA games in Gearbox Software's development pipeline. They also opened a new office in Montreal, which I wouldn't be surprised if Randy Pitchford no longer being in charge of Gearbox Software is a way in which, once again, Gearbox can shut down the Dallas, Texas office in favor of replacing all of the people with a Montreal cheaper labor and maybe less controversial, less combative labor. Although maybe Montreal has some more unions than Texas would. And then they were acquired by Embracer Group at the start of the year, which, being acquired, I guess just means that Embracer Group owns the majority share of the companies, so maybe Randy Pitchford doesn't have majority share. So I wouldn't be surprised if something happens and very quickly Randy Pitchford is voted out as president of Gearbox Entertainment.
More jewels, more.
But I would say one way to really, really increase your odds of failure is to go into movie making. And that is exactly where Gearbox Entertainment is going. They're trying to make movie and TV in an era where movie and TV is just even less relevant than it was before. And I wouldn't be surprised if slightly before Gearbox Entertainment completely falls apart, we see them make some kind of TV special showing off Randy Pitchford's magic, which, yeah. If anything, maybe he's stopped focusing on being a magician as much as he's started focusing on trying to just be a Hollywood celebrity. But yeah, I suppose that we have to take this with a bit of positivity and say this was probably a step in the right direction for Gearbox. If Gearbox software and the game developing of Gearbox is going to have a chance of success, because they really need to figure out a way to not just utterly collapse on Borderlands, the pre-sequel, and Borderlands 3 not really selling and not really being good at being a publisher, which the idea of them being a publisher has pretty much been thrown out the window, I think, at this point. That they have to kind of secretly work on Borderlands 4, but they also need to find that second tier game to support them, and they keep failing on that. Duke Nukem Forever obviously was never going to be it, but being a publisher for Bulletstorm, being a publisher for We Happy Few, the MOBA game they were trying to push that failed incredibly quickly. It's just been misstep after misstep after misstep.
My raging flames have got your back.
I think we already talked about this, that the Arcane Lion studio director is resigning. Here they are not even, GameDeveloper.com is not even showing a picture of the guy, so was it Video Game Chronicles that did this better? I guess it was. GameDeveloper.com says Niantic is buying the developer experience company Haas to expand its Lightship Advanced Reality Development Kit, I guess. That's what ARDK stands for. And then we already talked about this, that the Twitch data leak exposes source codes and creator payout records. The breach has been confirmed by Twitch. And then this is kind of an interesting article. Apparently, according to GameDeveloper.com, shady contracts and big payday dreams are driving the Turkey's booming hyper-casual studios. I have certainly seen on Steam an increase of Turkish-made games. So yeah. And and I think you might, without actually reading this article, just spin this up as growing pains, as I think this isn't going to spell the doom of games made in Turkey or anything like that. I think we will see more games made, and eventually contracts and negotiations will be figured out. It sucks that in almost every capitalistic system it is designed so that you can, for a very long time, exploit people with bad contracts and just acting in bad faith in general, and then it takes maybe decades, or if not longer, for some kind of rules and regulations and government oversight to come in and make sure people are paid fairly for their efforts. But yeah, I imagine that is exactly what's going to happen, is that we will eventually start to see a decent amount of games coming out of Turkish developers, and we'll start to see named brands that are recognizable and good.
Adventure's what I live for.
So that we haven't really been streaming that long, but it's also like really late, so I'm not going to try and stretch out this too much. So what we'll do is, this will be our last game. We've not gotten any of the daily quests done once again, or we got one of the daily quests done. But yeah, I'm definitely not spending a lot of time. I may very well just not get all the solo rewards on the solo quests. But we'll go through some games on Steam, and we'll just try and focus on the yes/no. This one's going to be Chinese only, so we can just say no. Anyways, 719 Chinese only. Looks kind of fine for maybe an NES style clone.
If I turned tail and ran, there wouldn't be a dragon.
Here we have Tanhaji the Lion, Martha Warrior of Shivaji. I guess that's how you pronounce it. I'm not good in the Indian language at all. As far as pronouncing things, so I probably mispronounced that pretty badly. I hate to just immediately have to compare a game like this to Prince of Persia and didn't point out how ugly this looks compared to even a really old game like Prince of Persia, but that's my cultural touchstone here. I think with polish, a game like this might work. It's a little boring, frankly, to have a character's face completely covered up and potentially to have a bunch of characters all dressed the same. But in general, a more Eastern Indian themed game and environment might be interesting. This is $13.49 in English only. I think there's a mistake there, certainly, in not supporting, I guess it would be Hindi? Maybe I'm wrong about that, as far as which language. I know Indians speak English, but they also have a couple other languages. Or at least one other language. I was actually surprised. I caught the end of the Jungle Book, and I was actually surprised at what the actual ending of the Jungle Book is. That Mowgli catches the eye of an Indian girl, which I guess the whole Jungle Book story had been taking place in the jungles of India, and I guess that makes sense. There's panthers. I don't know if there's actually bears in that area, but whatever. But yeah, Mowgli just catches the eye of this Indian girl who's bringing a water jug to her village, and follows her with like a childlike attraction, and returns to the human species and living with society. Which, in all fairness, I think a lot of the really old Disney stories kind of end on the drop of a dime and don't have much of a story. And if they're based on a older narrative or parable, there tends not to be a huge wrap up to it. Yeah, we did not get any victories at all in this 3-hour stream. Not a single one. That's the level of frustration I'm dealing with these days. Alright, so I just want to cover a couple of games and then we'll skip this. Like, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl is out and people seem to be loving it. It is 82% positive of 1,393. There is a question certainly here as far as how much update really will happen here. This is, I think, from the creators of Slap City. It's English full audio and several other languages. They're asking for $40. I have to put this on the wish list. This does seem like this is the smarter move. It's kind of a weird collection of characters in the sense that if you like watch the Ninja Turtles on Nickelodeon, you may not know who this character is, and if you know who this character is, you may not be that interested in Ninja Turtles. And if you watch SpongeBob SquarePants, maybe you don't know who Powdered Toast Man is. Like, it kind of is just all over the place as far as characters. And I expect them to add more characters as much as they can. And I expect that they're going to try and continuously add content to this and make it a more polished online experience. You should probably question whether you should buy this game unless you're going to play online. Otherwise, the single player experience here may be incredibly small. There may not be a master hand and a story mode at all in the game, which makes it less likely that I would play this. This is the kind of game, if somebody gifted me, I may very well have very little to say about it because of the fact that your mileage will vary just based on who you're fighting. But let's just be honest here. Smash Brothers is never coming to PC. Nintendo is never going to bring its games to PC. So this is probably your best bet as far as your second character. And if you liked Slap City, which I think overwhelmingly positive, 95% of people did like Slap City, the experience there is probably very similar, if not slightly better, on Slap City than the Nickelodeon All-Star Brawls. It probably is going to have more budget and be better than Slap City. And retroactively, this puts Slap City on the wish list, whereas I had skipped it specifically because it's not any characters of real relevance and it's not a single player focused game. Yeah, I suspect, and I think they probably said it directly, that the Nickelodeon All-Star Brawls of a year from now will be significantly different from what it is now. And it's really unfair to compare All-Star Brawls to Smash Bros. Ultimate. It probably should be closerly compared to one of the Smash Bros. Games in the middle of the series. Not the very first one, because that's maybe a little too generous, and definitely not Ultimate. If anything, also Smash Bros. Ultimate maybe has too many characters. There's a lot of characters I imagine people just don't really even care about. Moving on, we have Super Monkey Ball Mania, which, yeah, seems like people like it. There was some thought that the physics would play very differently, but I don't think there's really any response there. There's a lot of DLC for this game, but it meets the requirements to make it to the wish list. There was the controversy in which the voice actor, the Western English American voice actor, was claiming that Sega was not paying royalties or discriminating against foreign workers, foreign voice actors, which he claims he was involved in the voice acting of this game, and Sega is saying no, he wasn't. So there seems to be some internal bad blood happening there. I never really did the research to see if Sega actually pays the Japanese voice actors royalties or anything. I wouldn't be surprised if it is a case that all voice actors are getting ripped off by Sega, and I definitely would assume that that is kind of what's going on, is that Sega's just ripping off everybody as much as they can. Here we have a game called Rainbow Billy, The Curse of the Leviathan. This one is one we saw, and I can put it on the follow list now, but I can't really put it on the wish list. $29.99, English, French, German, Spain, Spanish. This might be an interesting kind of adventure game with turn-based combat, but it might also just be a little too short for what it actually is. You fly around different areas, you spread the rainbow to bring back colors. When you have, I guess, enough rainbow fuel, you can go from one island to the other island. Seems like the gameplay does vary somewhat, but it is also very possible that a game like this just doesn't play that well. Here we have the Luferterra Renovator, which looks like it's a Chinese game if I was to guess. There's just a lot of text being shown here. Yeah, $6.29, Japanese full audio, and then Chinese, so it's a Japanese game. Well, that would explain something, I guess, as far as why it looks a little bit better than average Chinese games. Yep, but since it doesn't support English, we can skip that. Lawnmower Game Battle, we can say no to. $1.21, English, allegedly full audio. Lake Road, looks like an asset flip, infinite runner. Yep, terrible description, $19.99, English only. We can say no to that. Here we have a game called Bloody Lane. I'm going to just try and get rid of some of the games for today, and then we'll just have kind of a lot on Friday, which doesn't really help anything, but it makes some progress. $15.29, English and German. This is definitely a no. Here we have Protect Sea War, all one word. $18.99, English, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. And that's going to be a no. We have Am I the Baddie? Question mark, which looks like a mobile game being ported, and looks kind of like just a low-effort Pac-Man clone. Free, English only. I guess the price is right. Here we have Game Theory at Christmas, which it's like a very colorful, kind of unique art style. You, I guess, are picking different outcomes. I wonder if this is just a trivia game. It might just be a trivia game. Might be just a cheap Chinese game. $2.99, English, Chinese. It looks colorful though, so I'm going to give it a chance. Put it on the fall list. It's probably nothing. Here we have something called Cosmic Cat, which we can obviously say no to. $1.79, English and Russian. Here we have Hotel Magnate, which, well, it looks fairly polished. It's already mixed, so I have to just dismiss it. Early access, $22.49, English only. We have RBG On Experience, which just looks like a bunch of neon colors. $2.99, English, allegedly full audio. That's a no. Here we have a game called Balcony, which doesn't look like much of a game, really. Just this giant heads-up display at the bottom and a kind of zoomed out environment where I guess you're just probably running around trying to pick up items and deliver items. Would be my guess as to how the actual game plays. $2.79, English only. Can say no to that. This game is poop. Early access, $6.99, English and German. This word specifically should set off some red flags on Steam. and not be allowed, at least in the title, probably not even in the description. Here we have a game called Cyber Whiskey Guys Room, which, yeah, looks like nothing. Free, English only. Nothing there of interest. Here we have a game called Rescue Troopers, which doesn't look visually polished quite enough to interest me. Early access, $13.49 English. Maybe it actually does have full audio. Here we have Linevox 2 Forward to the Past, which looks like a low polygon racer game of no interest. $5.99. It's in a bundle of 56 other items for $71.96. English, German, Chinese, and Russian. So that really solidifies that it's a low effort asset flip game, almost certainly. Here we have a game called Hidden Forest, which also too is obviously an asset flip game. I really don't want to see in screenshots somebody holding a samurai sword, a shotgun, a handgun, and a knife, and a grenade. Like, that is just too much. Like, you really should pick and focus in maybe on a sniper gun and a handgun, or maybe a handgun and a samurai sword. But once you start getting to that third or fourth weapon, that's getting too muddled for screenshots. English, allegedly full audio, $17.99. Here we have one called Nether Space, which looks just like a 8-bit clone of a game. $5.99 English only. That's just too expensive. If you're selling this for 69 cents, maybe then it would be desirable. Like if you really, really liked Galaga and old arcade shoot 'em ups, and this was 69 cents, I could see it being worth a purchase then. But when you're asking $6, that is just way too high. Here we have a game called Missing Bullet, which I suspect is a Chinese asset flip game. Again, somebody with a samurai sword and a bow and arrow and a wooden or more medieval sword. $17.99 English only. We're starting to see obviously Asian developers and publishers putting out English only versions of their games, which that's going to be annoying certainly if we start to have to just, for lack of a better term, culturally, economically profile. I don't want to say racial. It's not a race thing. It's your culture. If you're economically desperate for money in China, if you're culturally taught to do business the way Chinese businesses often do it, which is to make a very low quality product. A lot of them do. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. That's going to kind of suck if all of a sudden I have to look at a game and say, oh, is this an English developer? I'll consider it more than, oh, this is not in English letters as far as the developer name. I'll consider it less. Here we have a game called Chessel, which I guess is half chess, half puzzle. There might be something to that. 99 cents, English only. Yeah, I guess you put that on the follow list and see if people like it. I have yet to find a chess puzzle game of any real interest, although ideally I would want actual chess puzzles to help me be a better chess player and not have them potentially be chess puzzles that you would just never actually be able to play in actual chess. If there's like 5 queens on the board, for instance, that's not very helpful in teaching somebody how to play chess. That's never really going to happen. Here we have Into the Dangerous World I Leapt, which is tagged as surreal. It does look surreal. Question is this an asset flip game, or is there actually something here? We're seeing a lot of flying around, zooming out, fading out, fading in. Live jump transitions on top of fading outs and fading ins, which really makes me think they have nothing to show. Which is a shame because this has the general feel of a game that might be interesting. And we've got another one of these glitches where the audio is playing. And hopefully you're not hearing that. Yeah. Free, I guess, is the right price. English only. But this kind of weird doll-like creature humans as an art style in a surreal game might have some success if somebody put more effort into it. Where is the auto muter? There we go. That should stop the audio from playing. Here we have Serene Asylum, which, yeah, doesn't look visually polished enough for a horror game. Free, English, allegedly full audio. I guess check it out if you're interested. Here we have a game called Myst Legacy, not to be confused with the Myst M-Y-S-T. Looks like it's just a RPG, although it's tagged MMO RPG. Early access, free to play. I guess it is an MMO. Well, that definitely eliminates it from my consideration. English and French. The game Succubus is out. It's tagged with sexual content and nudity. There was a lot of concern, certainly, that Succubus as a game was going to lean into being much closer to Agony and not having good gameplay in it. Whereas, at the risk of not being YouTube family friendly, this has been blurred good. You are actually playing here, where Agony had you just wandering around solving puzzles and playing stealth gameplay. Succubus actually has you running around hacking and slashing other demons. Yeah, and so feels like Mad Mind Studio has maybe learned their lessons from Agony and realized that if they are going to go for a hardcore, hey, this is going to be a character that is naked most of the time and there's going to be a lot of nudity in the games, and we're going for an X-rated vibe of a game. Also, this game is incredibly bloody and gory from the looks of it. They actually need to make the game good, though, because you can't just sell on sex. And that's almost certainly what they learned from Agony. Interestingly, it seems like there's character creation also in the game now. The teasers and trailers for Succubus kind of stopped happening for a while, and I think they actually put some more effort into it, and that's really applaudable that people are actually willing to go quiet and make a game that is actually well received. Of course, you run into the problem, certainly, that that you are going to maybe not be able to play this on YouTube without censoring it. What I'm not seeing here is any kind of okay, it is coming with an 18 plus patch. Great. So I could buy Succubus, play it, and be relatively safe from any backlash or content or it's not content ID at that point. It would be family friendly guidelines. So you can just play the game without the patch. Exactly what you're looking for here. They also have this game called The Beast Inside that is bundled with, and The World of Agony that is bundled with. And there's apparently a game called Tormentor, and there's the prologue demo, which I guess you don't probably want to play that at this point. So this has English full audio. Let's see, if we look at Agony, it never got past mixed reviews. And for a game that came out in 2018, it's like 50% positive and very few reviews in the first place. And there was the other game that never really came out, Scorn. I don't think that game ever actually was released. And then this one, The Beast Inside, is not from Madhead Studios, so it's kind of questionable why it is being bundled, but it is on my wish list too. Let's see. Scorn game. Yeah, this game Scorn was announced from EBB Software like a year ago, and we have not seen anything more with it. This is going for more of a H.R. Giger art style, while still being particularly gory and explicit. It definitely felt for a brief time like we might start to see more adult games, more AA, AAA adult games, particularly from the West. There is still a lot of question as to whether that really is going to happen, though. I think there is too tight of a control with pro-censorship movements from PlayStation, and in all honesty, Xbox probably would not really want to put Succubus or Agony on their consoles, although I think they kind of did. And Nintendo probably doesn't really want a lot of Succubus and Agony style games on their Switch, although maybe they let that through too. And at a certain point, it might be okay that there is only once every 6 months. If we could get it down to once every 3 months even, that would be about the right time for another like adult focused, gory, highly sexually charged Western game. We don't really want it to get to the point of the visual novels that come out in multitudes, a dozen every single day. Often it feels like that's too much. And unlike Japanese adult visual novels, there's actual effort we're starting to see in these types of games. And eventually we would like to see it where somebody could make something like Tomb Raider, and if the story really called for it, and if the creators really wanted to do it, they could put a nudity scene or a sex scene in Tomb Raider, and nobody would complain, and nobody would bat an eye, and there would be no censorship pushback. And unfortunately, we're just not at that point now. Some of the Quantic Dreams, I think, tried to have a sex scene. Indigo Prophecy, I think, has a sex scene in it, and even a couple days ago, I heard somebody complaining about it having that scene in it, either because it was a bad scene or because it just felt they felt it shouldn't be there. But video games do need to break out of the idea that it's just kid stuff. Otherwise, video games potentially goes the route of comic books, in the sense that comic books could never really establish themselves as being for adults or having versions of comic books for adults. Marvel and DC tried multiple times to try and have older audience books, and have failed miserably every single time. Only the indie comic developers have slightly had some success in making adult comics, and it's not been a lot of success. Here we have a game on Steam called Squared Up, which, yeah, doesn't look like much of anything other than a puzzle game, it looks like. free to play, English only. Here we have a game called Abandoned. I would almost want to play Agony to then play Succubus, but it gets really difficult to justify that. English full audio, this game, $1.99. This is definitely no. If Agony was in its 60s or 70s, maybe then I would consider it, but I would have to pretty much just play it with a walkthrough and try very quickly to rush through it. I very possibly would just spotlight it. Now, if somebody gifted me Agony, sure, I could spotlight it for an hour and I'd be fine. But I don't know if I really would want to struggle through the entire game. Succubus isn't even really a direct sequel to Agony. It's just kind of the same art style and possibly in the same world while having a completely different gameplay mechanic. This is an interesting puzzle game in that you're playing as a sword that bounces around walls. So it looks like it's a precision platformer, but in reality, it actually is not so much of that. It's more of a mouse puzzle game. This is $1.99. I'm going to put this on the follow list. Right. And that gets enough of the games to covered. So what I'm going to just do is off screen click on everything else and see if there's anything worth mentioning. And I'm going to go ahead and just close anything that looks like absolute garbage without even mentioning it. And do a little bit of curation on screen. Like puzzle art snakes we can close, puzzle art birds we can close, puzzle art cats we can close. More jigsaw puzzle games. And I'm leaving the vast majority of these games here to talk about in Friday's stream, which hopefully I can wake up early on Friday, but I wouldn't be surprised if I can't. It's another late stream. One of the things with Insomnia is that you kind of go in these cycles and it feels like you've done 4 or 5 days worth of events when really it's just been one day. Here's a game we can obviously say no to. Card matching memory game. Not a terrible depiction of Santa. Like Santa Claus tends to be depicted the same. So, and usually Santa Claus traditionally is depicted in very different art styles compared to what you would see in a video game. So if you are going to make a Santa Claus game, I think you probably do benefit from having somebody who's maybe closer to a Hallmark card artist, someone who would make greeting card art depict Santa, than compared to a video game artist. Because that's not really what you expect to see. Yeah. And I'm getting rid of a couple more games. There you go. Right. So now I'm just going to look at my Twitter feed and see if any new news happened, which almost certainly none did. I suppose I'm going to potentially have some extra problems on Friday too, come to think of it, as I'm trying to fix plumbing and electric issues at this point. So, yeah. I imagine we probably will have a stream on Friday. I'm not going to claim that there's a high chance that we wouldn't. There might be a small chance that I don't get around to it, but I expect to stream on Friday. It may be later, come to think of it, than that. Meanwhile, I'll continue to upload videos. See, having new internet installed also could be an issue, certainly. So yeah, everything's changing. Everything's needing repair or changes. Yeah, probably won't really affect anything, but there is also always this consistent issue of the United States not being willing to fund itself and potentially threatening to default on its loans, which is never done that, but also in this current economy, who knows what that would really, how that would really affect things. More than likely it would never happen, but it is always threatened. Whoever is not in power threatens to not vote for the budget, and nobody who is in power can ever get around to ensuring that the budget gets paid no matter what. Like, the easiest way to explain it is, in 2021, the United States has still yet to set up auto pay on its bills. Is the equivalent. That it would be very easy for them to pass continuing budget resolutions to at least fund the general things that everybody ends up voting yes for anyways, because they want to use the general things potentially defaulting as leverage one way or the other. Yeah, and if they did actually ever default, then there would be potentially a couple of weeks until they stop defaulting, in which government employees and people possibly on Social Security, but probably not even on Social Security, would not get paid in time, which would really screw over, like, people on Social Security not getting money would really screw them over. Government employees are kind of more used to being furloughed or not paid. We certainly aren't getting anywhere close to somebody having universal basic income or passing that idea. That whole concept has not even been talked about lately, and we certainly aren't getting anywhere close to, as a government, implementing any major improvements on most people's lives. Yep. Which does certainly make an argument for that saying people flippantly often say that governments don't ever do anything helpful, that they're always in the way. It often does feel like that. But yeah, I'm dangerously getting close to a political rant, and video game development won't really be affected by that. And if anything, video game sales are going to be as slow as they can be, just because of the limitation of income that already exists and the limitation of new hardware that already exists. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.